Welcome to Truth in Life Today with Congregation Adat Ariel, Jewish believers in Jesus and teachers of spiritual warfare. If you'd like to speak with us tonight, call 618-924-1851. And now, here's the lovely and talented producer Deb.
Welcome to the Truth in Life broadcast, where we do our best every week to bring you a biblical perspective of the things we see going on around us and the headlines around the world. In the same tradition established for this program by Rabbi Moshe Lori, I am producer Deb, sitting solo at the table tonight, but joining me behind the microphone.
This is Jim, and once again, everyone, you have any questions or comments, feel free to give us a call. And by golly, you should this week. It's 618-924-1851.
And I said, I'm sitting here by myself. Our friend Richard, he joined us last week, but this week he's been diagnosed with C. diff. So after he went through all of those rounds of antibiotics for the MRSA virus that he was battling, then evidently that is a result of the antibiotics. He's ended up with C. diff, which is, from what I understand, very contagious. So he said he didn't figure that either I or you would want that. So he stayed home. So please.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Yeah, please keep Richard in your prayers. He's got a second battle to go through here. So they say it's treatable, but it's still no fun.
No,
absolutely no fun at all. So told him get those probiotics going too, you know.
Yep.
Antibiotic and probiotic. Antibiotic is not defeated by a probiotic. Probiotic just helps your gut. So anyway, oh well, like I said, keep him in your prayers. Lots to talk about this week. I'm kind of like dizzy here on things. Where do I start? What do we want to talk about first? I mean, we've had so many things going on. We've had the State of the Union this week. We've got a possible war with Iran. We've got all the. I mean, it's everywhere. So billionaires are leaving California. I have a list.
Figure.
Yeah, they want to pass this wealth tax, right?
Yeah, even Reid Hoffman's leaving.
It says here Zuckerberg. I've just got the last name from Meta. Page and Brin, those are the Google co-founders. They're leaving. Thiel, the Palantir PayPal creator, he's leaving. Ellison from Oracle, leaving. Sachs, venture capitalist, leaving. Steven Spielberg, recognize that name, leaving. He's and then somebody that's the founder of DoorDash named Fong.
Yeah.
He's leaving as well. So that's just a few of the billionaires that are exiting California.
Yeah, brought to you by your good governor, Gavin Newsom.
There you go.
Newscom, as we like to call it.
But yeah, we have, of course, we had the Olympics. So we are happy that our, the hockey teams, both the men and the women, brought home the gold. Everybody said, and it's 50 years to the day that it happened in 1980, right? So it's like it's not the same.
No, it's not.
It's not the same.
No, it's not. Having lived, I didn't see this year's hockey game, but it was NHL players against NHL players.
Mm-hmm.
In 1980, it was a bunch of what we would call in athletic terms scrubs.
Mm-hmm.
They were scrubs.
Well, they were
barely college hockey material, and they went and they beat. Now they didn't beat them in the final, but they beat them in the quarterfinals. They went up against the Russians, the USSR. Now these guys were professionals.
Yes,
these guys had a bloodbath against the Philadelphia Flyers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the Broad Street Bullies. They were holding their own against Philadelphia, and our little Olympic team went in and beat them. What was it, 7-3? I mean, it wasn't just they beat them in overtime. That was a shellacking. So nothing like it.
It's nothing like it, and that's why I have really no interest in the Olympics anymore, because it's really not the Olympics anymore. It is. See, we should have held the line. We should have held the standard. Russia was so desperate to be supreme that they were putting their professionals in against amateurs around the world and slaughtering everybody because they were cheating. That's called cheating.
You want to know the big cheat? 1972 Olympics, the U.S. team, full of college players, was beating the Russian national basketball team, full of professionals, And the referees, every time Russia missed a last second shot, they had 3 seconds left. They did it twice, and they missed the last second shot, and they kept calling fouls and putting 3 seconds back on the clock.
Yeah, but
And so they were going to do that until Russia scored the winning bucket, and they finally did the third time around.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. The world, we, the United States, the rest of the world should have upheld the standards of the Olympics, right?
Yeah.
It should have been, and that's what that's just another of those little things that, okay, well, if we can't beat them, then we're going to join them and we're going to be just as dirty as they are.
Right.
And so it's degraded the things. It's part of what I see in society all around. It's just another example. Like I said, those guys worked hard, those gals worked hard from our teams. It's not easy what they did, but they're pros. And it's not the Olympic spirit. It is and so I said, why, if they want, okay, why don't they just get pro teams from around the world and have those pros go against each other?
They do.
Don't call it the Olympics.
They do.
Keep the pros out of the Olympics so we can keep the Olympic spirit. But no, everybody has money in the game and it's all gotten corrupt. So I have no use for it. Like I said, congrats to them. They showed up at the State of the Union. And of course, the entire State of the Union shows you exactly where we're at.
Right.
You know, if you've watched it, I don't really need to comment a whole lot about it, except, fun speech. It didn't feel like 2 hours to me. Of course, Trump was going to set that record.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to have the longest one ever. Yes, I'm going to be,
I'm going to make it entertaining too.
Yeah. And he made it entertaining. Everybody, even the CNN commentator said, that was a great speech. He did a great job,
Yeah.
And it had plenty of things to, cheer about. And then you saw the people on the other side. They were disgraceful.
Nope. Yep. It was
when Trump said they're crazy, but they're disgraceful.
Right.
But it's useful that they showed who they are. We now, I mean, there's nothing to be. You don't have to worry about not knowing where they stand. They showed exactly where they stand.
It was a daycare full of 8-year-olds.
But no, it was not that really so much. They've showed what they are. They're truly against the American public. They are truly sold out. They are truly all the downfall of this nation. Everything that they vote for is anarchy.
Oh, sure.
They are against. I don't call them. No, they aren't children. They know exactly what they're doing. They have sold their souls. We can't if we say, well, they're 8-year-olds. No, an 8-year-old does things, impulsively, yes. But I mean, these are adult people who have sold their souls to the Satan, basically, for the almighty God dollar, for whatever. And of course, you see the people there that are supporting all of, they're yelling at those two that were yelling at the president. Well, they're all for the United States being robbed because we're the infidel.
Okay.
I mean, they're all, if you have all of these Muslims coming in, we've talked about this before. They come in, they don't have any desire to assimilate. They're on their 100-year plan to make the entire United States a Muslim nation.
Right. Yep.
So what do? You plunder the infidel. So they come in and they set up daycares that take billions from us, and then they sit there and they yell at the president and call him a racist.
Well, that's why I use the term, because of what was going on in Minnesota.
Yes, yeah. I mean, but they are adults, and they are liars, cheaters, stealers, because they are trying to plunder the infidel.
Yeah,
they're trying to make this entire nation Sharia compliant. That's the goal.
It's all taqiyya.
And so, yes. And so, and if you dare to say, oh, you're a racist, it's like, well, Islam isn't a race. Well, you're Islamophobic, so you're a racist, and all this sort of stuff to make you back down.
Yeah.
they're using our laws against us, but we're going to have to. I have a sheet of paper here, and I'm encouraging everyone. This is put out by Flashpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to go through a procedure as if you're buying it to get it, but you go through it. It's free.
Mm-hmm.
You need to get these. You need to take them to all your local politicians. They need to know. And it's titled on their website, why Sharia, why there is, that's not exactly right. Why not Sharia is what it's got a question mark. And they give you all of this list here. It says when voting. Now, why? Now, Flashpoint, I think, is based out of Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So they're particularly seeing this. And everybody's like, well, why are these Muslims in Texas? It's a red state. Precisely why they're there.
Yep.
Precisely.
Yep.
They learned from the Democrats. We got to move into these red places, and we've got to make them purple and then turn them blue. And then we can get those people who are voters blue to go along with us to get the laws changed. And so in that area around the Dallas-Fort Worth, they showed it again on their show the other night, over 48 mosques in 2 years around the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas.
Yeah, that's just in Dallas.
That's just in that part of Texas.
Yeah.
And they're trying to build this. So they're really, and that's what they're doing. They're going into, I'm sure they're on the doorstep there in Florida and trying to push into there. I'm sure they're trying to get all over Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we talked about it last week, how they're going in and they're buying up churches that are, the congregations, they're abandoned.
Empty.
So they go in and the churches are, I heard Gene Bailey, he's the host of Fox News. He goes, Fox News, Flashpoint, I'm sorry. He said he said he would rather see them bulldoze the churches.
Right.
Than to allow them to be sold off as mosques.
Yeah, I thought about that. Over where I live, there's an empty church there. And I was like, imagine if Muslims moved in there.
Mm-hmm. They're in New York right now, these Muslim businesses, now that, everybody says, this will never happen. Oh, Sharia won't take over the United States. We've got a Muslim mayor of New York City. And you know what's happening now? They're coming outside their mosques, on the streets, in the roads, and they're having their prayers.
In Times Square.
In Times Square, everywhere, blocking traffic. They don't have to do that. But why are they doing that? Because they've got mosques and they should be in their mosques doing their prayer. No, they come outside because they're declaring dominion.
Yep.
They're taking it over.
Yep.
And they've got their businesses all over, have these loud speakers they're putting on their Muslim businesses. And they're playing the Muslim call of prayer all over.
Right.
Really loud. And it's like they don't let church bells ring in some of those places at times, but they're letting this go on.
Mm-hmm.
And so somebody said, well, maybe the churches should start ringing their bells at the same time that these calls to prayer are going out and just keep them ringing while they're trying to pray. So, but that's what you got. But he's got this whole paper. It says, when voting, remember Sharia law makes all these things legal and enforceable, replacing our current constitution and legal system. Warnings to the West. He's got terrorism, torture, and violations of basic universal human rights. He's got them 1 through 18 here. Inbreeding, marrying first cousins, taqiyya. 98% of terrorism and human rights violations, religious terror attacks, 65,000 since 9/11, committed by Muslims or any non-Muslim. Nazi connection, met with Hitler and have the ties together with, that. Stoning for accusation of adultery, beheading, bestiality, men with animals is allowed.
Sure.
Animal sacrifice. That's happening in Hamtramck, Michigan, they're saying. Killing and eating of park animals, geese, ducks, all of that stuff. Removal of all dogs as pets. They're unclean to Muslims. Removal of limbs, opposite hand and foot for things like stealing. They're burned alive or for refusal to convert. Executions. Dictatorship replaces democracy. They abuse Western laws, grants to steal and overthrow. That's what we were talking about. We're the infidel. What better way? A guy comes in with 4 of his wives and he doesn't work. And each wife, they sometimes they don't claim them as wives.
Yeah.
So they're women with children and they can get on all of our, public works, public aid type stuff. And they take all the money.
A lot of them are also pedophiles, folks. They dress their male children up as women.
Yep.
To make them sexy.
Right. Definition of, it says throwing gays off of buildings, controlling retail merchandising, purchases and consumption habits, no pork and no alcohol and no clothing other than a hijab, burqa, or niqab for women.
Mm-hmm.
Sharia law replaces the United States Constitution. That's their goal. And he goes, abuse physical, emotional, and every way possible of children and women and non-Muslims. And so he's got the lists for all of that on here. If you want to get that, that is by Flashpoint. Just go to, it's fparmy.com. FP being Flashpoint, fparmy.com. And you can download this and make sure that you get it into the, if you got a politician running for office, say, hey, do you know about this?
Mm-hmm.
Put it in their face.
Yeah.
What do you feel about this?
And if you're tuning in for the first time, we've mentioned the word taqiyya twice. What does that mean? It means that as a Muslim, you can lie to all infidels in the name of Allah.
Mm-hmm.
You can say whatever you want.
Yeah, he's got it defined here, lying to overthrow and conquer non-Muslims through their systems.
Right.
Yep. Whatever it takes.
Exactly right.
So, and this is all going on. And I think that there's an article that's in the latest Levitt letter that I think addresses probably the reason why this is coming along. Of course, we're talking about, the society that is going downhill, that people not standing up for what is right. We had a president, Barack Obama, declare that the United States is no longer a Judeo-Christian nation, right? And so this article was written by Mark Creech. I think that's how you say his name. It's Creech. And it says ChristianPost.com. It's titled The Most Dangerous Enemy America Faces.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And he says this in this article more concisely and more eloquently than I can say it right here. So I'm going to go ahead and read this to you because it's like I said, yes, amen to just about everything he said. America has no shortage of enemies. China seeks to eclipse us geopolitically. Radical Islamists dream of our downfall. Cultural Marxists work tirelessly to dismantle our institutions. Secularists wage war on faith, history, and tradition. Our streets are fraught with crime, our politics with venom, and our families with fracture. That kind of says it all, doesn't it?
Sure does.
But of all the adversaries that threaten the very soul of this nation, none is more profound, more insidious, or more spiritually corrosive than the rise of progressive Christianity. Why do I say this? Because progressive Christianity wears an attractive attire of faith while quietly emptying it of its substance. It brings the Bible's vocabulary, but drains it of its meaning. It blesses what God condemns and condemns what God blesses. Yep. Evil being called good, good being called evil.
Exactly.
In doing so, it leaves our nation defenseless, not just politically or culturally, but morally and spiritually. One need only glance at the trajectory of progressive theology to see its insidious shape. Scripture's authority is the first casualty. Once the Bible is dismissed as myth and folklore, stripped of its divine inspiration, authority, and inerrancy, what follows is not mere drift, but apostasy. Every doctrine, every moral boundary, every spiritual truth falls like dominoes. Sin is no longer rebellion against a holy God, but merely a failure to live authentically. How the language changes here, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Sexual ethics are reimagined with everything from LGBT behavior to adultery and fornication celebrated as legitimate expressions of love. Abortion becomes a sacrament of autonomy. Gender becomes fluid. Idolatry becomes spiritual pluralism. Judgment becomes symbolic. Hell, once the solemn warning of the Lord Jesus himself, is reduced to a psychological metaphor, then dismissed altogether. This is not enlightened theological evolution. This is a damnable doctrinal demolition. Here lies one of the great ironies of our time. Progressive Christians have long contended that conservative evangelicals should stay out of politics. They assert that faith should have no role in public policy, that pastors should not speak to cultural issues, that the church must remain within its private spiritual lane. Yet in recent years, their own doctrinal reinterpretations have shaped the direction of this country far more profoundly and far more negatively than any sermon, rally, or voter guide ever produced by Christian conservatives. When progressive Christianity dismantles biblical authority, denies moral absolutes, blesses sexual anarchy, redefines family, sanctifies abortion, and erases the fear of God, these ideas do not remain within the walls of the church. They spill outward into legislation, education, entertainment, and cultural norms. Their theology has influenced our courts, our classrooms, and our culture, always drifting toward moral permissiveness and spiritual decay. You see what happens when your pastor doesn't stand up in the community, right? It begins here in the community. To ensure that conservative believers remain silent, progressive clergy smear Christian conservatives with labels like Christian nationalist, a term so elastic that it can be stretched to vilify anyone who believes Scripture should inform the national conscience. It is a weapon, not a description. It's meant to intimidate and delegitimize anyone who refuses to surrender biblical truth. By demanding that conservatives retreat, progressives have cleared the public square for their worldview to dominate. The results have been spiritually devastating for America. History illustrates just how dangerous this is. Germany, the land of Martin Luther, the cradle of the Reformation, did not collapse spiritually overnight. Its decline started in the seminaries where the liberal theologians divested Scripture of its supernatural core. Miracles were dismissed. The resurrection was demythologized. Judgment was declared incompatible with an enlightened society. Moral commands were viewed as culturally conditioned. By the time Hitler rose to power, the German church was spiritually hollow. Its pulpits had already stopped preaching sin, judgment, and the fear of God. So when real evil appeared, the church lacked the moral clarity to stand against it. Germany did not fall because Christianity failed the nation. Germany fell because a counterfeit had supplanted Christianity.
Yep.
The parallels to America today are chilling. Progressive Christianity is training a generation to believe that God does not judge, that sin is whatever society says it is, that Jesus cannot redeem but to affirm, that the Bible must bow before cultural sensibilities, and that salvation is really unnecessary because everyone is already acceptable to God just as they are.
Right.
Our nation cannot endure such a spiritual vacuum. No external enemy can destroy a country faster than a church emptied of the truth. When the pulpits surrender, the people lose their compass. When the people lose their compass, every institution eventually collapses. The family, government, education, law, culture. Without the fear of God, the moral imagination of a nation darkens. Progressive Christianity, then, is a dismantling of the Christian faith from the inside. It is a spiritual Trojan horse. It is a wolf in sheep's clothing. It offers America all the trappings of Christianity, but none of the power. It lulls the nation into a false peace while severing it from a holy God who judges those who transgress his law and a gracious God who mercifully saves sinners. America may face adversaries abroad and agitators at home. Still, none is more dangerous than a fake Christianity that preaches grace without a cross. a kingdom without righteousness, and a God without holiness. If America fails, it will not be because our enemies outside the gate were stronger. It will be because the enemies inside our sanctuaries and standing in the pulpits were subtler than we realized, preaching a gospel without a rugged cross and a Christ without a crown. A faith stripped of truth cannot save a soul, much less save a civilization. And I think that says it all.
Yep. I saw a YouTube video this week. I forgot who the gentleman was that was a pastor, but he was talking about all the sin that had happened in his church the last previous 3 months. He said, we've had affairs in this church. He says, we've had to take people out of the choir. They couldn't understand why they couldn't sing in the choir. He says, teenage girls coming into church pregnant. He says, you make a mistake like that. He says, they should be told it's wrong. He says, but you should welcome them into the church. He says, that's not what I'm saying. He says, the problem is it's sin. And he says, I don't want to ruffle feathers here. He says, but I'm your pastor. And if I don't say anything about it, it's going to go on and on and on. And it needs to stop.
Yep. And most of the people sitting in the pews don't want to be called out on it.
Right.
They want this progressive, nice, passive, oh, God is a loving God. Exactly. He accepts you just like you are. And no, he doesn't. That's totally, I mean, it sounds lovely and soothing, but it's a total lie. And you're going to hell on that lie.
Right.
And I mean, we just can't be nice about it anymore. I mean, we can't. Everybody's been so nice and been, like you said, we welcome everybody in.
Right.
But we're not going to condone your sinful behavior.
Right.
And we're going to tell you, we're not going to water down the Bible.
Right.
We're not going to say.
We're going to tell you it's wrong, and we're going to tell you to clean it up.
Yep. And we're going to say that, God has his rules. He doesn't change. God never changes. And, but that happened, like they were talking about Germany. I mean, they had these, I've looked it up before and now I've forgotten it again. The German higher criticism school, where they would sit and they'd take the words of Jesus and decide whether or not he said it or not. And they had their little beads, and it's like, okay, if he said it, it's red. If they think he said something close, it was pink. If they think it was like, well, they don't think he said it, but he might have said it was gray and then black. Sure. I mean, all these, and then they came out watering down the whole Bible, the whole New Testament, basically.
And it's just like Islam. I mean, they've spent the last 4 or 5 generations where they've been taught nothing but how to hate Jews and Christians.
Right.
I mean, even math problems. You've got 4 Jews, 2 Jews are killed. How many Jews are left?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just it's all.
And in their view, too many,
all hate.
Right?
It's all demonic.
Right. It's but that's what we're dealing with, folks. So when you see these people in the State of the Union, it's a result of this progressive Christianity.
Right.
I mean, you've got the most unlikely person in the world that you would think Donald Trump has to stand up there and tell them they should be disgraced. And I mean, he's a businessman out of New York City.
Oh yeah. And he was successful in making the Democrats the outcome of the speech. Why? Because he made a great speech.
Right.
If it would have been a bad speech, he would have been the story instead of the Dems.
Right.
But he executed his part of it perfectly.
He did. And he did, and of course now they're already making commercials off of it,
right?
Against the Democrats. It's just that we've got to do a better, effective job of standing up, and it's not fun, folks. I mean, it's like, hey, you're going to possibly be spit on. You're possibly going to be ostracized, but if you don't stand up for the word, if you don't stand up for God, and make it plain, then you're going to have to answer to that. I mean, when Yeshua said, hey, I never knew you, I mean, this is what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And you can't back down. We can't back down. I was listening last weekend to Mark Biltz's service. He had just gotten back from the NRB, and he played a video of a young woman. So if you have an opportunity to go back and listen to last week's, it's El Shaddai Ministries. I'll get it out of my head. El Shaddai Ministries, his videos. He's on YouTube. He's I don't know where else. I don't know if he has it posted to their website or not. But anyway, you can bring up last week's Shabbat service, and in there's a young woman, and she does a very complicated video of telling about all of the structure in the Middle East of the back and forth of everything. All right. But the premise of the video is why they believe that Donald Trump delayed in attacking Israel. I don't agree with their assessment necessarily, but it's very interesting. The thought of understanding that when the United States dollar went off the gold standard, that back 50 years ago, over 50 years ago now, it was backed up by Saudi Arabia agreeing to trade oil in the petrodollar. That's what that's what backs up our money right now.
Henry Kissinger himself negotiated that.
And so that's where they're coming from. They thought when Saudi Arabia stood up and said to the United States, now what happened, and I don't remember if we talked about it or not, or if I've mentioned it, but they said one thing happened, I think a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I don't know, because this deal between the United States and Saudi Arabia ran out in 2024.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure did.
So Iran took out half of Saudi Arabia's ability to deliver oil.
Yep.
They hit them.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they did that, then Saudi Arabia expected the United States to step in and take care of that for them.
Right.
And Donald Trump, who was president, said that is not a United States problem.
Yeah.
That is a Saudi problem.
Love the guy.
And so they said, "Oh, really?" So what happened? China stepped right on in there.
Yep, they sure
and
did.
China negotiated a deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran,
mm-hmm.
which then, so what everybody was saying is that when Iran started doing this, when the people were rising up and protesting and they started killing everybody, and Donald Trump said, "I'm got your back, we're going to come in," or whatever he had said, and then all of a sudden he didn't do it, they're saying, oh, he backed down because Saudi Arabia threatened him. I don't believe that.
Mm-mm.
At the time, if you remember, I said that I was told or heard through some way, I don't remember who talked about it, that Benjamin Netanyahu called up Donald Trump and said, don't do it.
Don't do it. It's a trap. Yep.
No, it's not a trap. He was basically, we don't know what the two men talked about.
Right.
But of course, Benjamin Netanyahu has all the information.
Mm-hmm.
And he told him, basically, I guess, we can't do that right now. Okay. And what's been happening in all this time? An armada has been forming all through that area. We didn't have all of that there.
Right.
But Trump has been sending it because I think Netanyahu said, if you're going to do this, you don't have enough here.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So, because this is bigger, Russia's there.
Right.
China's there.
Right.
This is meddling with them. There's a reason why Donald Trump took Maduro out. Because China and Russia and all were involved with all of that, and Iran with the oil and the transfer and all that. Donald Trump effectively shut all of that down.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he also wants Greenland. But the big thing, the big player he took out was that easy transfer through Maduro,
sure.
through all of the oil, through Iran, all of this stuff, all of that alliance. He's put a kink in that. But I don't believe that he was threatened by Saudi Arabia. Now, I mean, could Saudi Arabia pair up? Nobody wants, China wants to be the reserve currency, and nobody wants the yuan as the reserve currency.
Right.
They don't. Nobody does. And so, but they're all vying in there. But yes, they do have a considerable hold over us, because if Saudi Arabia decided, well, we're just not going to trade in the petrodollar anymore, we're going to work out something else, which could be easily done now with AI.
Well, and they're already doing it. They were doing it before AI.
Right. But I mean, it can be
through
done.
BRICS.
Yep. So, then we've got a problem there.
Mm-hmm.
But that was, like I said, if you want to hear all the specifics and the ins and the outs of all of that, that was a video that it came through the Jewish News Syndicate. And I didn't realize that on YouTube, the Jewish News Syndicate has all these videos.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another resource. If you go to on YouTube, not on their website, because I'm on their website quite often. I didn't know they had all this. So if you go to YouTube, look up jns.org or the Jewish News Syndicate, and you can see all sorts of videos that they have attached there. And this one young lady, I think her name is Mira K. Like her last, she doesn't give her whole last name. She just has the letter K, Mira K. And she has a British accent. And so has a very good breakdown of things. But like I said, I don't believe that Trump is that easily dissuaded. I don't think that he would care if he knew that there was some reason for him to go in. I mean, he would have liked to have been able to do something immediately before they murdered 40, 50,000 people, however many. We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know how many are murdered. But that's a problem, because he's taken everything over there, and the only thing we have protecting Taiwan at this time, I think, are submarines.
Well, you got the Iranian president out there who kind of he kind of reminds me of Boris Badenov. Say the name, Masoud Pezeshkian. You're right for once, stupid American. And the reason I go Rocky and Bullwinkle is Boris Badenov's boss was called Fearless Leader. And so the Peshkian is saying, our supreme leader has said that there will be no nuclear weapons made. And it's like, well, why aren't you allowing new UN inspectors? If there aren't any weapons made, we don't need the inspectors, you stupid American.
Circular thinking, yeah. They think they're smart, don't they? They think they're brilliant. Oh, well. Another thing, and let me see, I'd have to read this on here. I haven't really had a chance to explore this, and I can't print it. But Ariel Ministries has this thing. The latest thing, and I guess it's being perpetuated by Candace Owens and all of that ilk. They're saying that the Hebrews are descendants of another people group, instead of that. And that's to, I guess, delegitimize their ties to the land. They're trying to say they're descendant from somebody named the Khazar group. And so there's a whole thing in here, Khazar myth. It is in a newsletter magazine from Ariel.org. And it's like you have to flip through the pages here. They're so tiny. But anyway, they say here that throughout their history, the Jewish people have often been the target of ill-informed rumors and myths. In medieval ages, superstitious peasants were fed the falsehood that the plagues and the death swept through cramped villages were caused by the Jews poisoning the wells. It has been observed that Jewish people were succumbing to diseases at a much lower rate than the general population. So the rumor was hatched. In reality, the reason for lower death rates was that the Jewish communities held to a strict code of sanitation mandated in Jewish religious tradition, including hand washing before meals, something not practiced in the general population, right? Other prejudices were ludicrous, such as the charge that Jewish people use the blood of children, Christian children, in order to make Passover matzah. a charge that is so irrational and absurd that the hateful intent of the people inventing the fiction becomes clear. What is especially sad is that a significant number of the people making these false charges in years past were members of large institutional churches and imagined themselves to be Christians. And the same thing's going on right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it says, for those of us who are Jewish believers in the Messiah Yeshua, these slanderous statements, along with the bias found in some Christian communities against the Jewish roots of the faith, are very unsettling. And while we are uncomfortable in our skin as Jewish believers in our Messiah, we find ourselves often fending off foolish and uninformed negative theories about the Jewish people. These theories have become more common with today's social media and YouTube videos made by people with a very biased agenda and little interest in telling the whole truth. A more recent myth has grown in popularity, even in the evangelical community. It has a pseudo-scientific sound to it, but its effect is stirring up anti-Jewish sentiment in the same as the older myths. It is summed up in an email question I received in January of 2017. Not me, but the author of this article, right? Is it true that most of the Jews in the world today are not blood Israelites, but are in fact Khazars who converted to Judaism many centuries ago? Okay. To understand the question, let's define some terms. Simply put, the biblical definition of a Jew refers to someone who is ethnically and biologically descended from one of the 12 sons of Jacob who formed the 12 tribes of Israel. Members of all 12 tribes are represented among the Jewish people today. The notion of lost tribes, i.e., that entire tribes migrated away and are being recovered today, has been proven false upon careful research. Additionally, the Bible uses the term Israel and Jewish interchangeably. So whether one is descended from the 10 northern tribes of Israel or the 2 southern tribes of Judah, by the New Testament times, all were called Jewish, as seen in Romans 11:1. While in modern liberal Judaism, some would like to redefine Jewishness as a code of common ethics, the scriptures are clear in defining it by ethnicity. Okay? A person can be Jewish without embracing the beliefs of modern rabbinic Judaism. The Jewish people are broadly divided into 2 ethnic groups: Sephardic or Mizrahi Jews, centered around Israel, the Middle East, and the Mediterranean, or Ashkenazi Jews, whose ancestors migrated from the Middle East into Europe around AD 800. The kingdom of Khazaria was an amalgamation of some Turks and Mongol tribes who established a capital in AD 720, located in the Caucasus region of modern-day Russia and Azerbaijan. Okay. The kingdom eventually expanded into parts of Ukraine and Romania. But by 1030, it had shrunk to a small size and was breaking into parts. So is there a Jewish connection to the Khazars? This is where written records are scarce and legends loom large. Further, the retelling of the earlier legends leads to later revisions. One version of the story says that in the year 860, the Khazar king Bulan was listening to a debate between proponents of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and decided that Judaism was the faith he preferred. While he was able to convince a number of his family members and nobles to convert with him, the vast majority of Khazars did not convert. Even those who believe this story to be authentic conclude that the number of Khazars who continued holding to a Jewish faith was relatively small, approximately 2% of the worldwide Jewish population of their day. They further believe that as the Khazarian kingdom weakened and dispersed, this very small number was absorbed into Jewish communities in Europe by the year 1100. I'd never heard of these people. There are other reputable historians who say that the King Bulan story is a myth. derived only from oral tales and legends and assembled into a book titled The Khazar Correspondence, which was first published in 1577 in Constantinople.
Huh.
Of course, the book was printed 600 years after the supposed conversion of King Bulan. Even at the time it was published, many contemporary historians doubted its credibility. This small footnote to history would have remained obscure were it not for a book written in 1976 by the Jewish author Arthur Kessler. In his The 13th Tribe, Kessler argued that modern-day Jews of Ashkenazic European background are actually descendants of these Khazar converts and not descendants of the Semitic Israelites of the Bible. Personally, he also saw the opportunity to argue that if Jews were not Semites, whom many in Christendom blame for the crucifixion of Jesus, then the racial bias for anti-Semitism would be removed. Of course, his was a very naive assumption because it imagines that racism and bigotry have some rational basis. Further, as Bible-believing Christians, we understand that the ultimate origin of anti-Semitism lies with Satan in his plan to stop the Jewish people in their two-God appointed, oh boy, like I said, it's itty-bitty, tasks to bring the world to the scriptures and to bring the world to the Savior. While many academics criticize the 13th Tribe as lacking scholarly historical research, neo-Nazi, Ku Klux Klan, and other toxic racist groups promoted it as part of their anti-Jewish agenda, as did some Christian groups who already had an ill-informed bias against the Jewish roots of our Christian faith. Arab governments picked up on it and cited it as a basis for denying the legitimacy of the State of Israel. Right? And for some, it boils down to this. If modern-day Ashkenazic Jews are not descendants of ancient Israelites, then they have no right to the land of Israel. Those with an anti-Jewish agenda don't want you to think too closely about that. For if you do, the question arises, what percentage of Jews in Israel are Ashkenazic compared to Sephardic? Most sources report that in Israel, 45% are Ashkenazic Jews, whereas the majority, or 55%, are Sephardic. Of course, because the Khazar theory only questions Ashkenazic Jewish background and not Sephardic, it is not crucial to Israel's legitimacy, for the majority of Jews in Israel are Sephardic and have never left the Middle East area. And while the actual historical records that touch upon the Khazar issue are small, preserved mostly in Arab and Byzantine writings that only mention the Khazars incidentally, the last 20 years have brought about an additional means of getting to the truth of the matter. DNA and genome testing are not only the new frontier in medical research, but also have made a contribution to genealogical questions, right? The cautionary warning that many overlook is this. Ethnic identity conclusions based upon DNA tests are only as good as the raw data that the scientists write into the computer program. There is no completely certain genome identity for Khazars that we can test for. As far as the small number of Khazars who remained in AD 1100 assimilated long ago into a dozen different ethnic groups, such as Romanians, Russians, Armenians, Georgians, and Ukrainians, right? On the other hand, by looking at the Sephardic Jewish population, which has never left the Middle East, and by testing their DNA, particularly looking at men within the group with the names Cohen, Levi, or Levi, and variations of those, all indicating descent from the tribe of Levi, scientists have found striking genome markers that correlate across geographic areas, all held by Sephardic Jewish men with a Levite background. The marker appears frequently and consistently, leading some scientists to label it the Jewish priestly marker. In 2013, a very detailed scientific investigation was conducted by Wayne State University involving many PhD scientists from Europe, Asia, and America on the question of any genetic link between the Khazars and the Ashkenazic Jews. Their overview document is 59 pages alone.
Wow.
With many genome charts and a description of the methodology used. It is available for free online. The Wayne State University Genome Study concluded this. We find that Ashkenazic Jews share the greatest genetic ancestry with other Jewish populations and among non-Jew populations with groups from Europe and the Middle East. No particular similarity of Ashkenazi Jews with populations from the Caucasus is evident. In other words, they're related to the Jews in the Middle East and not to anybody from the Russian tribes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that most closely represent the Khazar region. Thus, analysis of Ashkenazi Jews together with the large sample from the region of the Khazar Khaganate, I guess, corroborates the earlier results that Ashkenazi Jews derive their ancestry primarily from the populations of the Middle East and Europe, that they possess considerable shared ancestry with other Jewish populations, and that there is no indication of a significant genetic contribution either from within or from north of the Caucasus region. Now, this story goes on talking about, but I just wanted to give you a taste of this. It goes on for several more pages, but this whole theory that's being promoted by Candace Owens, I think in particular, and I think Tucker Carlson's trying to buy into that as well. It's bunk, basically. There is no, the Jews are not descendants of something known as Khazars.
Mm-hmm.
So
nice try, though.
Nice try, but nope, that ain't going to happen. And speaking of the Tucker and Candace anti-Semitism that's going on, I was listening to Lance Wallnau, one of his shows. Can't remember which one. I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but he was going into the whole Epstein file things. And so I guess that that's another thing that's a bugaboo to Tucker and Candace is the Epstein files. And I guess they try to say that Epstein was a member of Mossad. I'll take a little sip here. So Lance, he went through some interesting things. And where is that I had copied off? Yes, right here. I just wanted to go through this because everybody keeps on the whole thing about the Epstein files. And specifically, I guess, former Prime Minister Ehud Barak and his relationship with Epstein that he had for years. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, and Lance was pointing out the parallels to the U.S. Through this whole thing. Of course, they're trying to take down Trump with the Epstein files. They've been trying to take down Netanyahu with the Epstein files. So they said Netanyahu has pulled back the veil on left-wing, demonic, Soros-funded anarchy machine working its way in Israel. Well, we've had here the left-wing, demonic, Soros-funded anarchy machine here as well, right? Trying to destroy Israel. It's similar to the United States, parallel spiritual warfare. I thought that was a great way to put it. Parallel spiritual warfare. Now, this was the post that Benjamin Netanyahu put on X. And he said, Jeffrey Epstein's unusual close relationship with Ehud Barak. Ehud Barak had at one time been the prime minister, right?
Right.
Doesn't suggest Epstein worked for Israel. It proves the opposite. He said, stuck on his election loss, this is Ehud Barak, from over 2 decades ago, Barak has for years obsessively attempted to undermine Israeli democracy by working with the anti-Zionist radical left in failed attempts to overthrow the elected Israeli government. Now, we've been hearing about that, right? All all of these leftists that have wormed their way into the Israeli government and are working that way. Barak's personal fixation led him to engage in activities publicly and behind the scenes to undermine the government of Israel, including fueling mass protest movements, fomenting unrest, and feeding false media narratives. So that means probably that Ehud Barak was involved with Barack Obama, because Barack Obama had sent in his forces over there to try to overthrow the government of Israel.
Sure, several
And
times.
they were doing it through Jeffrey Epstein.
Yep.
But the other interesting thing that Lance pointed out is that the head of the Rothschilds Swiss Bank and also the CEO of the World Economic Forum have been exposed in the Epstein files, working with Epstein.
Yeah.
And it said these guys were working with people like Ehud Barak and others to create a one world banking system.
Yep.
Okay. And so this World Economic Forum CEO working with Epstein, he was working with Jeffrey Epstein to position the World Economic Forum of Davos as the new global governance.
Mm-hmm.
So these elites working with Epstein back in 2018, they were gathering together to replace the United Nations.
Right.
So Jeffrey Epstein was working with all of these people to try to overthrow the United Nations.
Mm-hmm.
So that was these guys. We're not talking about the island and the mistresses and stuff with this. This was Epstein working with these people. So he had big ties to putting these people together and money.
Right. Yep.
So it wasn't, and that was his goal, not to dismiss this stuff going on with the island and the slavery and the debauchery there.
Yeah.
But this is his other side of what he was doing.
Yep.
Okay.
That was the reason for all that. I mean, yeah, he was
Right.
getting his jollies on this side, but my theory is the FBI. I think he was an FBI informant all along, and the FBI funded him.
You mean
And
the
then,
CIA?
Well, it could be CIA too. You could be right. And then he started getting all these big donors involved, and everybody wonders where he got all of his money from.
Right.
I think it's from all these big donors.
Well, in doing all of this global thing that they were trying to overthrow, and he said it feeds into the Jewish hatred against Netanyahu.
Right.
Okay. They were all, but and Lance pointed out, he goes, Trump has foiled China. Trump has foiled the Middle East, Iran's nuclear ambitions.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump has also foiled the Davos One World Rise.
Yeah.
And what has he got now? The Board of Peace.
Yeah.
Which overthrew not only Davos and and all of that going on, but also the United Nations.
And while all this was going on, he was being impeached 3 times.
Right.
Got past a Russian hoax that worked against a leader in another country. I believe it was Argentina.
Mm-hmm.
They played the same trick on him, and it worked. I mean, Trump's amazing.
Yes, and unless you think this was one article out of Politico. I couldn't find everything that I couldn't find the article that Lance was reading from. I don't know what he was, because he had some interesting things to say about this. But this was one of the guys, this Borge Brenda. He's the Norwegian foreign minister, and he dined at least 3 times with Epstein. But he was part of this. It says here the World Economic Forum is investigating its president and CEO. This guy, Borge, B-O, and it's an O with a line through it. Borge Brenda. After his relationship with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein came to light in newly released documents. Brenda, a former Norwegian foreign minister, dined with Epstein 3 times in 2018 and 2019, and the two exchanged texts and emails. Now, this guy tried to deny all of this, but it has come out. Now, like I said, this is not the island thing. This is all of Jeffrey Epstein getting in there with the money.
Mm-hmm.
And it says here, he said this guy finally said he was completely unaware of Epstein's past and criminal activities and would have declined any invitations or communications had he known. I recognize that I could have conducted a more thorough investigation into Epstein's history, and I regret not doing so. And it says here the first dinner with diplomats and business leaders at Epstein's New York townhouse, that's where they had this, took place in 2018. Ahead of the meeting, the two exchanged views on the future of Davos, with Epstein saying the elite gathering in Switzerland can really replace the United Nations. So that's one of the things that that has been going on. So with that,
I want to correct something real quick. Trump's been impeached twice. Okay, I said 3 times a while ago he's been impeached twice, and I'm counting the third time if the Dems get into office and they decide to do it again. But so far he's only been impeached twice.
One thing I want to pop in here that I saw today, NBC News is reporting that the FBI Director Kash Patel has dismissed multiple Bureau employees connected with the 2022 search of then former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence. So a lot of the FBI employees that were connected to that, he has removed.
Good for him.
And so anyway, it's the NBC reported that the terminations occurred the same day Patel said federal authorities had acquired his phone records during the Biden administration in connection with the Trump investigations. In the statement to Reuters, Patel said that it was outrageous and deeply alarming that previous FBI leadership secretly subpoenaed his records along with those of now White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, and described the process as having been placed in files designed to avoid oversight. How much are they going to find? How much are they going to let him find? How much time is he going to have? Is he going to? I mean, it goes on and on. All of that, and then, from what I'm understanding today, the talks with Iran, Jared Kushner and all of them were saying they were very disappointed. Things, Steve Witkoff, they're saying things not going so well. But according to I-24 News out of Israel, Iran's trying everything, right? Negotiations between the United States and Iran are ongoing in Geneva as both sides attempt to find a diplomatic solution to the escalating nuclear standoff. According to U.S. officials speaking to the Wall Street Journal, American negotiators have made it clear that Iran must dismantle its 3 main nuclear facilities at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan, and surrender its remaining enriched uranium to the United States. And they say Iran is to propose to the U.S. a temporary halt to uranium enrichment, temporary.
We were never making it.
Oh,
we were never making it.
No. The team is also demanding that any agreement be permanent, rejecting the phased sunset provisions that allowed certain restrictions to lapse under the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Actions. And the Republicans have long criticized that the JCPOA is too weak. And of course, President Donald Trump formally withdrew the United States from the deal during his first term. So they're trying everything that they can. At the same time, reports from the New York Times indicate that Iran is preparing a proposal designed to preserve a limited enrichment capability while offering President Trump a political victory. The 4 Iranian officials who spoke on condition of anonymity said the plan would suspend most nuclear activity for 3 to 5 years. They're going to push it down the road a little bit.
Activity that we were never doing in the first place.
Right. and after which Iran would join a regional nuclear consortium. That the country would maintain only a minimal 1.5% enrichment level strictly for medical research. And its 400 kilometers of highly enriched uranium would be diluted in phases.
Yes.
It's ridiculous.
Don't mind that truckload of shovels. We're using that for surgery.
Yeah, that's right. It's we're going to have to keep an eye on things. Next week is Purim, but it's also a blood moon. And some are talking that I haven't had a chance to. I was sending you things that Amir Tsarfati was saying, and that he had said, what was the thing he said, based Based on reports from Geneva that the gaps between the United States and Iran remain substantial, the prevailing assessment is in Israel is that a military strike could be imminent. They're thinking maybe even as soon as this weekend.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Air Force has evacuated its base in Qatar, a move that further underscores the seriousness of the situation. And it says here that President Trump is expected to convene all relevant parties on the Iran issue tomorrow and reach a decision by 3 p.m. U.S. time, approximately 1 hour before the close of trading on Wall Street. So we'll see.
Yeah.
He's titling all of those things on his page as the winds of war.
So, I mean, the big question here is now they are very, very close to having a nuclear weapon. I heard, I believe it was you that told me that. And if that's the case, are they waiting for those weapons to actually come out of the line, and then they're going to do the hit? I mean, that's. I don't know, man. They're cutting this awful close. Is my point.
Right. Well, I have one article here that said that there's things going on behind the scenes. It says here, this is from the Jerusalem Post. It says that Trump advisors eye Israel first Iran strike to boost U.S. backing for American assault report. There's thinking in and around the administration that the politics are a lot better if the Israelis go first and alone and the Iranians retaliate against us. Senior advisors to U.S. President Donald Trump would prefer if Israel struck Iran first, believing that such a move would provide better optics and help muster voter support for a U.S. strike. So the Politico reported on Wednesday, citing two people familiar with the discussions. There's thinking in and around the administration that the politics are a lot better if the Israelis go first and alone, and the Iranians retaliate against us to give us more reason to take action. So they're trying to make this look like we're just not going in and attacking Iran for no reason, I guess. Although I think there's all kinds of reasons right now. They've murdered a bunch of people. They're worse than Hitler.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I don't know about worse than Hitler, but it's pretty bad.
About the same, right?
It's about as bad as what in Kosovo, what they were doing to the Albanians.
Right.
You know, it's in the tens of thousands. So
that guy, before I forget it, that guy that they took out in Mexico, that Mexican warlord, whatever,
Shempo or whatever.
whatever.
Mencha, yeah.
Mencha. Do you know he said that he would eat the hearts of his people that he killed?
Yeah, yeah.
Such demonic. Such actually, demonism. Ugh.
Indians used to do that. When back in the plains, I mean, it was called taking their soul.
Yeah, I know.
So
it's
demonic. It's absolutely, it sure is.
Anyway,
yeah.
So like yowza. So this is what you're dealing with. These people in Iran, not much better. They don't have any hesitation or qualms about just slaughtering people. The motivation behind this idea of is Israel going in on Iran first, centers on Iran's retaliation, the sources claimed, as more Americans would stomach a war with Iran if the United States or an ally were attacked first. According to them, the line of thought around Trump is, we're going to bomb them. However, other considerations are also being taken into account. Now, this is coming from the Jerusalem Post, quoting Politico. So I don't know how much you want to trust Politico or even the Jerusalem Post. These are left-leaning things. Okay. So, but I'm just passing along here. It says, however, other considerations are also being taken into account, according to sources, including the risk of potentially depleting the United States munition stockpiles, which could give China an opening to take Taiwan. How close is China to actually taking over Taiwan? I'm not really heard a report about that exactly.
They could probably take Taiwan anytime they want, but the problem is we're there. The U.S. is there, and I don't think it'd be a good idea for them to do it right now.
Now, potential American casualties are another consideration. If we're talking about a regime change scale attack, Iran is very likely to retaliate with everything they've got. Politico quoted on one of the sources as saying, we've got a lot of assets in the region, and every one of those is a potential target, so they're not under the Iron Dome. Yeah, I mean, our people are not under Israel's Iron Dome.
Mhm.
But how about Israel going in there and taking out their ballistic missile things that they've got?
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, do we know where they are? Why don't we take them out?
I bet Mossad does. I
You
mean,
know.
and that's the reason I'm saying, are they waiting for some of these missiles to be made? And that way, whatever happens, if they don't get all of the enrichment materials, at least they got the bombs.
So there's a high likelihood of American casualties, and that comes with a lot of political risk. I thought we had some form of shield. That's why we were there one time with Israel to help back up their system with our system.
Yeah.
I thought. Anyway, I don't know.
Mhm.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is set to meet Trump's envoys. Well, they did that today. Things didn't go well.
Well, part of the defense that they've
So-
got is from the ships, the aircraft carriers,
Mhm.
the destroyers out in the Mediterranean. So, and in the not in the Strait of Hormuz, but in and around Iran. So
Now
they're going to be the defense.
Here's another part of this. The U.S. Department of Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network proposed a rule on Thursday that would, if finalized, cut off Imber Merchant Bank AG from the American financial system. Now it's spelled a capital M, a capital BAER, like Sticks Bear and Fuller, but cut off Imber Merchant Bank AG from the American financial system as a result of the Swiss bank's financial support to illicit actors linked to Russia and Iran.
Yay.
Imber has funneled over $100 million through the U.S. financial system on behalf of the illicit actors tied to Iran and Russia, stated Scott Bessent, Secretary of Treasury. Banks should be on notice that the U.S. Treasury will aggressively protect the integrity of the U.S. financial system using the full force of our authorities. According to the department, the bank has facilitated money laundering and illicit finance activities on behalf of the U.S. sanctioned Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and its Quds Force, which oversees foreign intelligence operations for Iran and supports terror proxies, including Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis.
See, the gangsters are in high-level places now, aren't they?
Yep. The Treasury described Imber as a critical access node to the U.S. dollar for a wide variety of illicit actors, warning that its activities threaten U.S. national security and undermine the integrity of the American financial system under the U.S. Patriot Act. FinCEN, it's FIN and then capital C, capital E, capital N, can impose special measures on foreign financial institutions deemed to be a primary concern for money laundering. The proposed rule would bar covered U.S. financial institutions from opening or maintaining correspondence accounts for or on behalf of Imber, our Imber, I think. FinCEN has opened a 30-day public commitment period following publication of the notice of proposed rulemaking, and after which the agency might finalize the restrictions. This is the first cutoff to Iran. They're going to war.
Yep. That's
This is the first cutoff.
mhm.
They've cut the money off. So now this is written by Andrew Bernard from the Jewish News Syndicate. He says Khomeini reigns in control despite isolation, new report says. As the Trump administration considers renewed military strikes against Iran, one question facing policymakers is who is calling the shots in Tehran. In January, Iran International, a UK-based opposition outlet, reported that Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah al-Khomeini, has moved into an underground bunker amid security fears. The New York Times reported on Sunday that day-to-day control in Iran has largely passed to Ali Larijani, the country's most senior defense official, as Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. So this rat has gone into his hole.
We've got to get rid of moose and squirrel.
Yep. But in a new report from United Against Nuclear Iran argues that despite Khomeini's physical isolation, he continues to be the primary source of authority in the Islamic Republic through his control of the Beit-e-Rabari, his 4,000-man private office that serves as a state within a state. Okay? So he's like a pope with his Vatican. Okay? One of the report's authors, Saeed Golkar, an associate professor of the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, and that's an interesting place for him to be, right?
Yeah.
And a senior advisor at UANI told JNS that fatally weakening the Islamic Republic would likely require striking at both Khomeini and his inner cadre in the Bayt. And it's spelled B-A-Y-T, Bayt. Imagine you're dealing with an onion, Golkar said. If you want to peel it gradually, it becomes very difficult. You start to cry. But if you smash the center of it, then you tear out the onion much more easily, right? The report describes Khomeini and his family and his personal office as the nerve center of the Iran regime. Now, I understand he sent his family to Russia.
Yeah.
They not only call the shots on questions like Iran's leader's own succession, selecting candidates for president and ultimate control of the IRGC, but also controlling 60 to 65% of Iran's economy through institutions like the quasi-public Bonyad religious trusts that answers directly to Khomeini and employs millions of Iranians, which I wonder if some of this money that's being cut off is part of this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And part of that money that when they took out Maduro was going there too.
Right. Golkar, he's saying they've got the iron grip over the regime. Golkar told JNS that this institutional network means that limited strikes from the bottom up on IRGC commanders like the ones the United States and Israel carried out last June, or a top-down single strike on Khomeini are unlikely to produce regime change. He said, you have to target about 1,000 people. Then the system will collapse. So if they take out this Khomeini, they'll get another Khomeini.
Sure.
You know.
So they got to take them all out. Yeah.
Having said that, killing Khomeini is the most important element, he said. There are a lot of institutions in Iran, but all these institutions depend on one person. They were created around that person. In that sense, he said, Iran was unlike Venezuela, where the U.S. military operation to arrest Nicolas Maduro seemed to have produced positive results in allowing Washington to reach agreements with Maduro's successor. If you want to kill Khomeini, just Khomeini, without touching the Bayt or without killing his son or that core, then this Bayt, this office that is run by his son, would very easily be able to manipulate the assembly of experts and with the support of the IRGC pick another leader. So Khomeini has 4 sons. His second oldest is Mojtaba and is considered the most politically influential and often described as his father's potential successor. The system will continue. Weaker, but it'll continue. Unfortunately, there is no possibility that this succession will lead to the emergence of so-called moderate clergy as the supreme leader. UANI's report concludes that as long as Khomeini and his inner circle remain in power, meaningful political transformation inside Iran is unlikely. For any meaningful change to occur in the Islamic Republic, including regime change, the Bayt and its extensive apparatus must be significantly weakened through a combination of sanctions, cyber operations, and military measures. Until this takes place, the supreme leader's iron grip over the regime will endure, regardless of Khomeini's disappearances. He can stay in a bunker for as long as he wants.
Oh, sure.
And the system works through the Bayt, Golkar told JNS. Israel tried to peel from the outside. You have to go directly. If you want to change the system, you have to kill Khomeini and the Bayt before you can do anything else. So that gives a lot of insight there, I think, into what's going on.
Yeah, if you kill a bunch of underlings, I mean, it's just like everything else. You got to cut off the head of the snake.
Yep.
I mean, you know.
But it's got like 1,000 heads.
Oh, sure. But it all starts with the first head.
Yep.
And you can kill the other 999. You still got the head guy still in charge.
Right. This is Amir Tsarfati's newsletter. He says, Shalom from a nation which is once again on the brink of war. Another week has passed as Israel has remained in a holding pattern while other people posture over our fate. No matter what is decided between the United States and Iran, we will be affected. If America strikes, we will be drawn into the ensuing conflict. If President Trump settles for negotiations, then it will be left to Israel to do what's necessary to protect ourselves against an Iranian assault. Undoubtedly, an Iran left restrained only by words and promises will eventually come against us. We will not sit back idly and wait for that to happen. There is an irony to the timing of all this. Next Monday evening will begin Purim, an annual reminder of how the Jews were threatened with annihilation by the evil Haman. But one woman, Queen Esther, risked her life exposing the plot, thereby saving her people. The term Purim refers not to the genocidal plans, but the lots that were cast to select the date. To Haman and the Persians, it was never about the many lives that would be lost. It was just the Jews, no big loss. Instead, they were more concerned about the proper timing for the slaughter so that it would be done right. And he says when the October 7th attack was planned, the same pattern of thought was followed. The question was never whether to massacre the Jews. That was a given. The strategic calculation revolved around timing and coordination. When Hamas launched early, the Ayatollah's regime was not upset about the deaths and the brutality. They were angry that their broader plan that involved many of their other proxy militias was undercut. In other words, they weren't upset at how many had been killed, but at how few. Now, 2,500 years after the events of the Book of Esther, the Jews are alive and thriving. We survived the plans of ancient Persia carried out through Haman, and we survived the plans of modern Persia or Iran carried out through Hamas. And now it is the Ayatollahs who find themselves on the chopping block. I am a man who can appreciate poetry, and there is a beautiful poetic justice at this turn of events. So happy Purim to all of you. Am Yisrael Chai. You know? So, and he says, on Monday, I held a Bible prophecy roundtable discussion. So if you want to go to his Mideast and Beyond update, go to, it's beholdisrael.com. And he says, war by the weekend. We are coming upon a critical weekend today. A third round of indirect talks between Iran and the United States in Geneva have already temporarily halted. Both sides say they want negotiations to work. I wouldn't put money on it, he says. Abbas Araghchi, foreign minister of Iran, said they will not give up their peaceful nuclear purposes. Man. He went on to threaten the targeting of U.S. bases in the region, even if they are on the territory of Arab countries. On the American side, President Trump in his State of the Union address said he will never allow the world's #1 sponsor of terror to have a nuclear weapon. As U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee said, Iran is a threat to the U.S., not just to Israel. Many Americans don't think about it because Iran is thousands of miles away from them. But for 48 years, Iran has brought death to America, killing thousands of Americans, and is working to build a global nuclear threat, said the ambassador. In the State of the Union, the president also demanded a limitation to Iran's ballistic missile program. Currently, Tehran's military has missiles that can reach Europe. Soon, their range will extend to the United States. That's why President Trump wants a dome for us, right? When asked if President Trump sees Iran as a threat, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt responded, Iran chants death to America. You tell me if that's a threat. On Iran's side, they've said that they will not even discuss ballistic missiles. They are totally off the table. To me, that sounds like an impasse. That brings us to now. All of America's needed forces have arrived in the area. So they're all there. Countries around the world have pulled their people from Iran. Tehran is rapidly loading their oil tankers in at a clip 3 times quicker than this time last month. For the past 5 days, protesters are back out in Iranian universities in the tens of thousands, calling out death to the dictator. The time for the Ayatollah's stall tactics is coming to an end. When today's Geneva talks collapse, as they inevitably will, is that the moment that Trump will finally pull the trigger. This is a time for prayer, my friends. Pray for wisdom in Washington and a reality check in Tehran. Pray for the U.S. military stationed in bases around the Middle East. Pray for those of us in Israel because thousands of Iran's missiles are pointed at us. Pray for the Iranian people who desperately want this Islamic regime gone and who once more may become innocent victims of the Ayatollah's sins, right? So that's what we need to pray for in that and for Iran and for Israel and for all of that over there. Because our people, our soldiers are in harm's way. Now he says, amongst those hoping that war does not break out in the Middle East are those within Lebanon's government. It's not because they are worried that something bad might happen to Israel or America, nor do they hold any love for the Islamic regime in Iran. Their fear derives purely from self-preservation. If Iran goes to war, the Ayatollahs will activate their proxies. Suddenly, Hezbollah's rockets will all begin flying toward Israel. The Lebanese government has seen how that turns out. So, to avoid the heavy toll that Israel will exact from their country as they destroy the terrorist militia, the administration is pleading with Hezbollah not to join the fight if war does indeed break out. Youssef Raji, Lebanon's foreign minister, said in Geneva that the administration has received warnings that any involvement by Hezbollah would push Israel to strike infrastructure. We are acting by all means to prevent this, he added. So essentially, the government in Lebanon is just they can do nothing. Hezbollah has taken over Lebanon, and so that's what's going on there, and they're powerless to do anything about it. Apparently, the Democrats were a little unhappy at some of the things that President Trump said in his annual State of the Union address.
You think?
Yes. Texas Congressman Al Green had to be removed from the congressional floor.
Again?
Yep. While Representatives Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib heckled the president throughout. For Trump's part, he heckled them right back, calling them cheats and terrible people and blaming them for the rough shape that the United States was in when he took office. He's a New Yorker.
Yeah.
You know, like they think that yelling at him is going to bother him.
Yeah.
That's his bread and butter, right?
Yeah.
You know.
He's like, I'll yell right back at you.
Yeah. At one point, it appeared that the Speaker of the House was about to bring the gavel down on the unruly Democrats, but he ultimately decided to stay his hand. I thought, let them put on that display, he said. He made the right move.
Mm-hmm.
The partisan antics were churlish and childish.
Yep.
The theme of the speech was very patriotic and extremely America first, as a presidential speech should be. As an outsider, there are some things I wish had been said differently, and I would have preferred he had emphasized Iran's ballistic missiles to a greater extent. But his goal was America first, not Israel first, as it should be. It was a very smart move to leave the Iran situation to the latter part of the speech. In Iran, that it is the thing that is going on. In America, it is a thing. While the Ayatollahs are sweating while they are being surrounded by a third of the U.S.'s military, the American people are more interested in celebrating war heroes, brave rescuers, and their gold medal hockey team. That is the kind of arrogant attitude that speaks to the Middle East mind. Yeah, we may level your country tomorrow, but before we get to that, we want to recognize this 10-year-old girl for doing some cool AI stuff in her school. It's an interesting way to see the United States, right? It's interesting to note that Israel wasn't mentioned even once when the president talked about Iran. This is because the potential conflict is not about Israel anymore. It's about America as a superpower that promised that protesters that help is on the way. It's about an America that wants a quiet and prosperous Middle East. It's about an America that doesn't want the country that calls it the Great Satan to have missiles and nuclear warheads that can reach its shores. Israel has already shown that it can strike its enemies when necessary. Now, America is being watched by its own adversaries to see whether it has the chutzpah to do the same. And then speaking of cool AI stuff, Lieutenant General Ayel Zamir, IDF Chief of Staff, unveiled a 5-year plan focusing on AI, robotics, and space defense. Already, Israel is among the technology leader when it comes to defense, and our knowledge and hardware are being sought out by other nations. On the positive side, this will help revolutionize the way Israel defends itself. On the negative, for countries like Russia, Turkey, and Iran, it shortens the timeline they have for dealing with Israel before technological advancement makes their weapons obsolete. Which takes us back to the positive side. The Ezekiel war may be sooner than any of us think. I recognize that AI can be a controversial topic, and he has his views of pros and cons on yesterday's Middle East and Beyond update. So, but that is interesting. AI revolutionizing things as quickly, making things that the enemy has obsolete. That's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
On Wednesday, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi received a rousingly warm welcome as he stood before Israel's Knesset. Modi is the leader of the most populous country in the world, with 1.44 billion with a B people, and he oversees the fourth largest national economy. In the past, India found itself leaning more toward nearby Russia and Iran. But Modi has brought a new focus to his nation with a view to a new Silk Road that will help to make his country even more prosperous. The time Modi and Netanyahu have spent together on this trip thus far has already been very productive, with the two of them signing 16 memoranda of understanding on bilateral matters. This is very interesting, this Silk Road.
Mm-hmm.
Called the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, the IMEC. This trade route brings goods manufactured in India to the United Arab Emirates, from where it travels through Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and into Israel. Eventually, these goods will be loaded onto ships in Haifa, destined for ports in Europe. This alternative to the traditional Suez Canal route is safer and allows goods to arrive at their destinations 40% faster. So this is a big boon for Israel.
Mm-hmm.
We're always thinking, Richard's always saying, what's the spoil? What's the spoil? Right? So it could be adding to the plum of Israel to make it a more desirable thing to try to pick, right?
Yep.
As you can imagine, this does not sit well with Russia, Turkey, and Iran, who are left out of the process and thus out of the money.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, we see a motivating factor for these nations to come up against Israel, a country that keeps getting safer and growing more prosperous. He said that right after I said it.
Yeah.
Like with the last story in the Middle East and Beyond update, you'll get a deep dive into the importance of India and the IMEC. And then he said, the Huck versus the Hack. I like that title. He goes, the Huck versus the Hack. Rarely have I witnessed such a mismatch of intelligence, deportment, and class as I did when I watched Tucker Carlson conduct his quote unquote interview with U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee. Carlson came with a long list of traps in which he hoped to catch the ambassador, but Huckabee not only dodged them all, but turned many around on his interviewer. At times, it was embarrassing to watch Carlson default to his trademark laughter as he attempted to think on his feet. What quickly became evident is that facts don't matter to Tucker. The narrative does. His narrative is that the Israelis of today are not the Jews of the Bible. He went so far as to suggest a 23andMe style inquest in which all Israelis would submit to a DNA test in order to prove their Semitic ties to Abraham. That's why I read the article about the Khazar, because he's big in promoting this lie. In Nazi Germany, Jews were accused of not belonging in Europe because they were Jews. To Tucker, Israelis don't belong in Israel because they're not Jews. This is the anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist rhetoric of a growing portion of the conservative right. If Republicans hope to have a chance of maintaining power in the November elections, they need to get a rein on this quickly. I can say the same thing to the Jew-hating segment within Christendom. If Christians ever hope to make a true impact on the world, this doctrine of hate, that which the Bible clearly states God loves, must be left behind. And so that's why we're here. That's why we try to always promote um, and an understanding. We are Zionists through and through, and I don't hesitate to say I am a Zionist. And so that's where I stand. So all of that. Um, one other thing I had, that I haven't had a chance to really sit and ponder it, but I was listening to Creflo's Grace series last week, and he was really emphasized living in the finished for all things. And it made me think about, a lot of us have a tendency to, Yeshua is Lord. He is God, right? He was God in the flesh, right? So we sort of push, we exalt him and we put him at a distance. And I think part of the living in the finished, he could have done, I guess, we understand the technicalities of why he had to come here in an earth suit and he had to live his life sinlessly and he was the lamb. We understand that. But we sometimes dismiss that the other part of that we need to observe is we need to see how Yeshua lived his life, because he expects us with the Holy Spirit in us, just like he had the power in him to live our lives as he did on this earth. Okay. And sometimes well, I could never be like Jesus. He commanded you to be like him on this earth.
Yep.
At some point in the future, whether we pass away and then go to heaven, or if we're taken out of here by the rapture, we will then become changed in a twinkling of an eye. We'll put on immortality and we will join him there as he is in his state now. Okay. But until that happens, we need to live in the state that he lived when he was here.
Yep.
He commanded his disciples, he told them, he sent them out, right? 2 by 2 to go out, and they preached the gospel. They laid hands on people. They became healed. They became believers. I mean, when he made the statement that you must, eat my flesh and drink my blood, it wasn't just the 12 guys following him. He had a whole host of people following him that left, right? But why were they following him? Because these disciples went out and made more disciples, and then they went out and made more disciples. And so we should be living our life with the same power and with the same purpose that he did. And so we shrink back. Like I said, sitting in the pews, letting somebody else handle it. We're supposed to be little Christ. That's why they call us Christians. We're supposed to be little messianic figures walking around, like Rabbi said, taking the authority of the 10 yards around us, but having an effect and living in the finish, that our healing is done, our emotional situation is taken care of, our finances, all of these things. Yeah, we have problems, but if we have problems, we are to be able to approach them as Yeshua did. What did he do? He laid hands on people, they were healed. Just like I was thinking about the rich young ruler. People have made all these doctrines around this rich young ruler, right? Because what happened to him? He came to Yeshua and he said, his question was interesting. What must I do to have eternal life? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. That was not a shallow question. And Jesus, he looked at him and said, well, and he basically, what did he do? He listed off the 10 commandments. And he came back to him and said, these I've done all my life, right? What do I lack? In other words, living outwardly all these rules and regulations and the law and doing all of this, he evidently had a hollow feeling inside. There was something wrong. He wasn't living in victory, even though he was keeping the Sabbath. He was keeping all the holidays. He was doing all the rituals. He was observing it all. He was a good Jew. Because Yeshua looked at him lovingly. But what did he do? He said, well, He told him, he said, here's what you lack. You need to sell all that you have and come and follow me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, so people have made doctrines. That means you shouldn't be rich, right? Because after all of it, you shouldn't have money. Oh, it's all you're going to be corrupt. No, no, no.
That's not what
That was that man's issue.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeshua pointed out to him, this is what's pulling you down. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We should allow the Holy Spirit to show us where we're lacking and follow him.
Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that man had an opportunity. He went away sad, and Yeshua said, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to be saved. And it's interesting what the disciples said. They said, then who can be saved?
Right.
Why? They didn't have a problem with riches and wealth.
Right.
In fact, they knew that they looked upon a person who was rich as someone that God had blessed.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
God has blessed you. And so, you must be in right standing with God, which Yeshua had to point out to them, that's not exactly right either.
Right.
I mean, he had to point that out. But that was the mindset. If you are shalom, if you are whole, spirit, soul, and body, if you are wealthy, if your family is healthy, God's blessing you, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, this rich young ruler, he had a specific issue. And so we need to do that. We need to live our life, as Creflo says, in the finished, that we are shalom. And if we don't have shalom exactly, then the Lord is to point out to us, but we are to live as Yeshua lived. We're to operate as we need to get more. We get into our mind about saying, this is what's wrong with me and blah, blah. No, you live in the finished. You live as a perfect person, right? Like you allow him to work through you. You're not perfect. Him working through you is perfection.
Right.
Okay.
You're never going to be perfect.
You're never going to be perfect. No. But he can help you along the way to working out your salvation. He can help you work, but you live in the finished, in his finished work.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, and you get out of yourself. You don't focus on, like I've talked about the people who did the money, that focused on the people who were trained to recognize counterfeit bills. They didn't do it by focusing on counterfeit bills. They didn't see the sins. They only focused on the perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to focus ourselves and our attention, get it off ourselves, get it on him, start making ourselves follow the perfect,
Mm-hmm.
live in the finished, allow the Holy Spirit to work through us. And then all of these things will be revealed to us that we can correct along the way. And that's the only way, because we've got to get back to power.
Right.
We're going to need power in these last days. We're going to need to be able to show others that we are not weak. All right. We must, but I mean, it's not easy.
Right.
It's not, I'm not saying that this is an easy thing at all,
No.
but we need to get our eyes onto, because we've got this progressive Christianity.
Yep. We sure do.
That we're fighting.
Yep.
And we're going to have to become little messiahs. That's what Christian means.
Yeshua showed us how.
Yes.
I mean, when he came down to earth, I've been listening to a lot to Robert Henderson, who wrote the book The Courts of Heaven. Mm-hmm. And one of the illustrations he makes is when Yeshua came down, he could have come down as a god if God would have wanted him to, but he gave that up. Right. To do the things that he did as a man of God, because if he would have been a God, he could not have been the Messiah.
Right. Right.
And he says we would have nothing to emulate at that point.
Yep. So that's it. And on that, I'm encouraging everyone, get into your Bible, get into the Word, understand it, get whatever version of Bible you need, start learning what it says.
Get in the finished.
Yes.
Get in the finished.
Yep. And study it. Well, I'm down to my archaeological story. And it's about this. I don't know if you can see that, but that is a sword.
It looks like a sword, yeah.
With all sorts of barnacles. I looked at that barnacles, and I thought of the Rush Limbaugh commercial, Barnacle Brothers.
The Barnacle Brothers.
And I can't remember. It was funny. Those were the 30-second sales,
Yeah.
But
it's now over.
It's now over. Yeah, but it was funny. But barnacles. This is a sword dating to the 12th century Crusader period. Was discovered buried in the seabed off northern Israel's Dor Beach. The University of Haifa announced on Sunday. The discovery was made by Shlomi Katzin, a student at the University of Haifa's Department of Maritime Civilizations. While at the beach, Katzin noticed a group of divers swimming in the area with a metal detector. Believing them to be antiquities thieves, he drove them from there before spotting the sword protruding from the seafloor. According to the statement, Katzin notified Professor Deborah Zwikel from the Maritime Civilizations Department of the find. Zwikel, in turn, contacted the Israel Antiquities Authority, which gave Katzin special permission to remove the sword from the water to prevent further damage. Since their invention, swords have been among the most important tools in human history, said Dr. Sarah Lantis of the University of Haifa. In the Middle Ages, the sword became a symbol of knights and chivalry, as well as a symbol of the Christian faith. It was also one of the most common weapons used by Crusader knights whose lives depended on them. She noted that swords were considered highly valuable and as such were carefully preserved and maintained, and that discovery and study of such a personal and symbolic object are rare. Moreover, they provide us with a unique opportunity to learn about the lives of the Frankish knights in the Holy Land. So, Zwikel echoed the sentiment, noting that the sword's discovery sheds light on the Crusader presence along the country's shores, and that only a handful of similar swords from the Crusader period have been discovered in Israel to date. And says the sword, measuring approximately 1 meter long, was transferred first to a conversion lab at the Leon Rekanati Institute for Maritime Studies at the University of Haifa, and then later to the Elisha Medical Center in Haifa for an advanced CT scan to examine the blade's condition without causing it further harm. From the scan, researchers learned that the blade is a one-handed sword of European make and had likely belonged to a Crusader warrior. The CT scan the CT images also show a crack in the sword's blade, and that only a small portion of the original iron has survived the ravages of time and the sea. The CT scan allows us to peer through layers of time and stone, according to Dr. Ira Berkovich, medical director of Medica Diagnostics and a faculty member at the University of Haifa School of Medicine. Using the CT, we were able to see what human eyes cannot. The eternal inward and its precise physical condition, all in a non-invasive scan that preserved the integrity of this rare find for future generations. Ziv Biton, CEO of Elisha Medical Center, shared that the hospital's medical staff is proud and honored to have taken part in the project, opening a time tunnel to the past in the form of a Crusader sword. When the past meets the future within the walls of our hospital, there is nothing more rewarding. And so that is the sword. Well, what's left of it? I guess the barnacles and all of that have taken the place of what the metal was there. So at least basically what you have is just an outline of what the sword used to look like. But very interesting and very fascinating.
Definitely not stainless steel, right?
No. Nothing like what we have today. So probably, I mean, it's amazing that anything's there, but the little sea creatures all surrounded it
Yeah.
and made it. So I am out of stories.
Oh,
I
well,
guess.
I guess we've done all we can do
I
here.
guess we've done all we can do here. And next Wednesday, we are going to be celebrating Purim here at Adat Ariel, which is actually going to be Shushan Purim. Purim actually takes place, I think, Monday. So that's why they're wondering about this, what's going to be happening with Iran, because that's when Purim happens. So, but we're going to be having teaching from Rabbi Vern, and he's going to be giving us his, teachings about Purim that night. We're going to, you know, try to have some food and nosh here and all kinds of stuff and celebrate. And, who knows? But I encourage everyone, like we've been talking about, live in the finished, study your Bible, study the Lord, and also to pray for the whole situation in the Middle East. And hopefully, maybe tomorrow night, Brother Larry can lead us in a prayer for the folks there. Of course, all around the world, persecution continues. Christians getting killed is still going on, I believe, in Nigeria and all of that stuff. So much turmoil around the world. And then we have the turmoil here that they're trying to take us over from within here as well. So we've got much to stand on in prayer. But if you like to hear this information and like to know what's going on out there and want to keep this show coming your way, Jim will tell you how.
If you'd like to make a donation, you can send it to Truth in Life Today, 1301 Enterprise Way, Suite 63, Marion, Illinois, 62959. That's Truth in Life Today, 1301 Enterprise Way, Suite 63, Marion, Illinois, 62959. And in your envelope, stick a little note in there. Tell us how you'd like your donation to be used.
We are back on Rumble. I'm happy to say, but we have lost a lot of viewers off of Rumble. Not as many people joining us, but maybe we can hopefully stay on here more in a steady fashion.
Yeah,
and we'll try to be here as as dutifully as we can be every week. Lord willing, as our friend Richard says, keep Richard in prayer. Keep us all in your prayers. And until we meet again, same time, same place, 7 p.m. Central Time on Thursday evenings. Shalom, everyone.
Shalom.